It's Samira from sacredsoulpractice.com. So happy to see you and to be back. I am sharing tonight about making sure we're live, inner parenting. I was just on a beautiful call that I do quarterly in a beautiful group called Women Speaking Up. And we shared tonight about what was on our heart. And the reality is, one of the things that came up was around inner parenting, and I figured what a great time to share about it here in terms of why it's so important to trauma recovery. Inner parenting is really important on your recovery journey, really from anything, because here's the thing: people do the very best that they can when it comes to parenting. And some parents really struggle. They weren't prepared to have children, and they had them anyway, right? And they cross their fingers and hope for the best. And it's not the easiest job in the world, right? Under the best circumstances. And so often it can be challenging to give our kids what they need emotionally, physically, spiritually, all the ways, right? All of those basic needs. We're talking Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so when we um, don't get what we need as a kid, when we don't go through completely the stages of development, we can get stuck. And so you might hear someone talk about, that person seems like they're in an arrested stage of development, like they're stuck as a teenager, perpetual teenager. Um, you might notice somebody who really has this like wounded inner child that always easily offended, that melts down, that really struggles with emotion regulation, that can't work through conflict resolution, maybe struggles to speak up. I had many of those challenges in my 20s. Baxter, our friend, is here. Our new puppy is in my bookshelf. Baxter, no baby. And I get him, please. When we think about all of the different needs that we have as a child, when those needs don't get met, that energy, thank you, doesn't go away. And when it doesn't go away, it needs a place to go. And oftentimes it can come out in maladaptive, self destructive ways. And when we think about this core desire that we need to feel loved, to feel safe, to feel appreciated, valued, right? Um, when those needs are not met, we can really struggle to meet them ourselves and to get them met in healthy ways. And so when we think about all of the different ways that we can self sabotage, some of those ways really are coming from these unmet needs that we had as kids, that are wounded parts of our psyche that need support and healing. And so often, when we are in the personal development community, when we're in our on our journey of self-help, right? What can come up is like trying to self-help our way through trauma. And the reality is, trauma is a beast all by itself that really needs specialized care. It needs a certain framework, it needs a certain approach because traumatic stress, right? Like trauma has symptoms and really aspects often of a traumatic brain injury. And the reality is, you can't only say an affirmation to heal a traumatic brain injury. Now, they can help, right? I love affirmations. Louise Hay, her work blessed my life, 20 years ago, saved my life in so many ways. The way that we speak to ourselves is so important. And there's a real neuroscience to healing trauma. There's a real skill set of how we work with the conscious mind, the unconscious, and the subconscious in the way that we heal. Hi, baby. Hi, guys. And when we are willing to do that deeper work with someone who is trained to do it, our whole lives can change. And what I want to share about this is like, we talk a lot about like masculine energy, feminine energy, this idea of like an inner mother and an inner father. Everyone needs that nourishment, and many of us do not get it. And some of us received it, right? We may have had a two-parent household or one great parent, and that's fine, right? And there can still be emotional needs that we had as kids that did not get met. Though that emotional need didn't go away, even if we learned how to hack it or suppress it or, babe, get him, or put the thing up so he can't come back here. There are different ways that we learn to kind of hack the system, right? But the need itself doesn't go away. And when we don't meet that need, that can become a trauma itself. And so sometimes we think trauma has to be these big things, this big T trauma. Often trauma is a small thing, like a small T thing, and over time, too many or a lot of small T things can, in and of itself, become big T, right? And so when they're layered on top of each other, um, it can become quite tricky for the nervous system, to process that. And so, what I want to say about inner parenting is that when we have emotional needs that were not met, oftentimes it can leave us feeling like we're not worthy, or why don't I deserve to be loved? Why can't someone love me in the way that I need? What's wrong with me? What is so bad about me that someone can't show up for me, right? All of these different beliefs get created around these wounds, these attachment traumas, um, and these emotional wounding. And when we think about the way that we heal trauma in so many ways is acknowledgement, right? Awareness, elevated consciousness, acceptance around what is, what happened, like the facts of the situation, and also moving into, where do I go from here? How do I heal this imprint? So often we are wanting to personal develop our way out of trauma responses, when in truth, we really have to do some of that deeper work to support our system in healing itself, and in coming back into wholeness, which it can with the right support and tools and frameworks, methodology, right? When we're able to really address these intimacy wounds, which is what trauma creates, right? This traumatic imprint. Um, we are really able to do that work when we have support, when we're really putting emphasis and intention on healing. And the root word of heal is whole, to return to wholeness. And I really want to encourage you to think about, if you're feeling stuck in your trauma healing journey, and maybe if you don't even think that you have trauma, or you know that you do, and you feel like it shouldn't be that big of a deal, or you should be moved on from it already, I really want you to think about these inner parts of yourself, maybe that are younger and that are feeling tender around whatever it is: transition, relationships, making a decision, growing your business or your project or your side hustle, really putting yourself out there in terms of your next level, whatever that means to you. If you're not where you want to be yet, right, oftentimes there's something that's holding you back. And often I have found that something um, is rooted in an old trauma, an old experience. And when we have the tools and perspectives, hi, Luana, thank you for being here. um, we can shift so much. We can shift it in a really graceful way, with ease. And it doesn't always mean that it's easy or not painful, but we can do it, and begin to move forward. It's kind of like when you have like an orthopedic injury. Sometimes the bone has to be shifted, and that can cause pain, right? In order for it to be casted, and for it to heal properly. Sometimes even surgery is necessary, to repair the wound so that it can heal and move forward. Emotional surgery sometimes is necessary to heal trauma. When you work with someone who's trauma trained that can help you with that work, you can do it, with more ease, more grace. Um, and honestly more effectiveness. And it still can be challenging, but not as challenging as like being on this hamster wheel of things aren't better, why aren't things better? That can be exhausting all of itself. And so I wanted to just share a couple of takeaways from the conversations that have been present today around inner parenting. Um, we often are being asked to see our parents as people who had children that they may or may not have been ready to take care of. And when we're able to see our parents as people, um, and understand that the way that we need to be loved, and cared for might not come from them, right? That person might not have the capacity to love us in the way that we desire. When we understand that, sometimes we can have, um, like a person's capacity that might be like this size, and if our capacity is more like this size, the two are not always comparable. So if this person's pouring into us, we may not feel it if we have this larger capacity. If this person's pouring into this capacity size person, this person, it might be spilling all over the place because the person can't really receive, the kind of love that we're giving. And so when we think about a person's limitations, emotional limitations, capacity to give and receive, sometimes they're misaligned. And as children, we can take that personally. We can personally think, like, why can't this person love me? When in truth, that person, that parent might be so wounded, they might not even be in their right mind. They might not be in their body, right? And so they might be, engaging in things or allowing, horrible things to happen, and they aren't even conscious, right? And that doesn't mean that people get a free pass to act any kind of way and to do, anything without, reproach. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that sometimes people love us the best that they can, even if it's broken. And sometimes people do their best and it's not enough. And I think that sometimes we're programmed to believe that, um, we should, forgive and forget, or we should, um, just accept that someone did their best and that was that. It's not that simple. And the reality is, two things can be true at once. I had a very challenging childhood, and I have accepted that, um, my parents, I believe, did do their best. And still a lot of harm was done, right? Had many clients who have accepted that their parents love them and, messed up in a lot of ways that caused them harm. And what Iyanla has taught us for years, right, is that each person is entitled to their own experience. And Luana, you're so right. There's so much duality in life, and things really are often both and, not either or. They loved me or they didn't. My needs got met or they didn't. It's often not that simple, right? And so, Luana says, I'm just learning to understand this. I've always hated when someone said they did the best they could, but I'm learning it's true. Yes, and someone can do the best that they could, um, and someone else may have been deeply hurt even in that person doing the best that they could, right? We think about this when it comes to like, violence. Someone that was a drunk driver might hit someone else and that person die. The drunk driver did not usually, right, leave home that night planning to kill someone, and the person who passed away, their family is forever changed, and in some ways destroyed by the loss of their loved one. And the person who drove, right, drunk and had this tragedy happen, their lives are forever changed. And often that family is also torn apart. And so things are not always linear, and things are not always as they seem. So when we think about really becoming this inner parent to ourselves, it takes commitment and devotion and really learning a skill set of how to bring compassion and grace to ourselves, learning that we often have competing needs and competing desires. And sometimes all of our desires can't be met in the same moment. And so we have to learn kind of how to prioritize what we're needing, to learn to ask for what we're needing. We have to also be willing to do the work to learn how to receive what we need. Because when we have these deep parental wounds, sometimes it shapes how we see the world. And so if we learn that the world is not safe, if we learn um, that the people who are supposed to love and protect us really struggle to do that, it can shift how we're seeing the world. And that becomes our perspective. And sometimes, honestly, it can be jaded. Certainly mine was. And it can show up in relationships, it can show up in our finances, it can show up in our health. Lord knows chronic stress can impact our immune system. It does. We talked earlier in this series about the ACE study and how that really impacts our health outcomes, and I believe those things can be shifted. I'm living proof of that. What we do and commit to and engage in our body, in our mind, in our spirit, that's the blueprint that we're creating. Our bodies regenerate every 7 years, and so as we begin to heal and create new patterns and new neural pathways, things shift and healing takes place. And the journey is not always easy. And so we think about becoming our own inner mother, our own inner father, really balancing our masculine and feminine energies, and really putting emphasis on how to be good to ourselves, how to create discipline and compassion and deeper integration for ourselves, and really allowing those inner kid parts, inner child parts to grieve what they lost, what they didn't experience, the love that they didn't get, the childhood that they did not receive. And I, can you come play with him, babe? Um, the childhood that they did not get, right, in the way that they wanted. Disappointment can really be present, and it can be painful. And sometimes, just like my puppy who's biting my feet here at my desk, go see sister, babe. Um, when we think about the fact that, hang on, guys, sorry. Come on, see sister. When we think about the fact that sometimes things are not as um, simple as we wish they were. And the reality is, for children to not have those core basic needs met, it can leave an imprint. And what does this look sometimes like? Sometimes this looks like being, in some ways, like on this hamster wheel of personal development work, like trying to seek these answers, trying to seek this missing piece, when really it's more about accepting the parts of us that are wounded, bringing acknowledgement to them, bringing healing to them, so that they're able to integrate back into the whole of who we are. Oftentimes, that unravels so many of the unpleasant systems and self sabotage tactics that we have. It just disarms that energy. Um, and that can be a process. And it can be so important to have compassion with ourselves when we're accepting the fact that grief is as holy as our joy, and that sometimes we have to let our hearts break over things that are painful. And that oftentimes, like we've said tonight, Luana said it beautifully. There's so much duality in life. There can be both and that's a paradigm that I really have adopted in my life, in my own healing experience. And the truth is, as much as we love people, sometimes we can love people and they not be healthy to be in our life. Sometimes we can really love and support people and realize we need to best do that from a distance. Sometimes we can understand that our parents might never be what we needed them to be. They might not be capable of being who we needed, and that we have to become the parent that we needed for ourselves and really commit and bring devotion to that inner parenting process and that reparenting process. And it's worth the growing pains. It's worth um, the struggle sometimes to embrace that and embody it. It is worth it because you become the person that you needed when you were younger. And we all need that. And this world needs more people who are committed to that process. And so I love you so much. I so appreciate you for being here. We're going to go so much more in depth in this in the program that's opening soon. The master classes will be next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We'll be going over trauma informed leadership, what that really means, how we embrace it, embody it, and are able to integrate it into our personal life, into our professional life, into our goals and our dreams, and really create a framework around trauma informed leadership that governs our life, our work, how we live, how we love, um, how we are here, in this thing that we call life. I can't wait to share it with you. I'm so excited about it. I will be back tomorrow for more Safe Trauma Practice, the 30-day live experience. I so appreciate your patience as I have been recovering from germs and the impact they've had on my energy and on my voice. I so appreciate you. I love you. I'm rooting for you. And I'm so grateful to be here doing this work with you, one day at a time, together. Thank you for being here. Bye for now.